Some dreams cost everything to pursue. Others cost even more to abandon. In a modest apartment in Boston, a haunting melody drifts through the hallway at 2 a.m. The neighbors have grown used to it, these nocturnal symphonies that seem to capture both profound grief and unwavering hope within the same measure. Behind the worn keys of a second-hand grand piano sits Marcus Walsh, once called the most promising American pianist of his generation, by critics who have long since forgotten his name. His fingers dance across ivory, with a precision that belongs on the world's greatest stages, not in a cramped living room with water-stained ceilings. 7 years ago, Marcus had everything young musicians dream of: a full scholarship to Vienna, the attention of renowned conductors, and a future that sparkled with promise. Then came his sister Emma's diagnosis, and a choice no 18-year-old should have to make. "I'll have other opportunities," he told his tearful mother as he tore up the acceptance letter, the words catching in his throat like shattered glass. Tonight, as he plays, he doesn't notice Emma standing in the shadow of the hallway, clutching a weathered shoebox against her chest. Inside it lies 7 years of secrets, hundreds of newspaper clippings, concert programs, and rejection letters from music schools that never knew the real reason behind his sudden disappearance from the classical music world. "Why did you really give up Vienna?" Emma will ask him tomorrow, placing the box between them like a confession. The answer will change everything he thought he knew about sacrifice and reveal that sometimes, when we give up our dreams for someone we love, we're creating an entirely different kind of masterpiece. What would you give up for someone you love? And what if they never wanted you to give it up at all? Boston, Massachusetts, 7 years ago, morning light filtered through thin curtains, casting golden stripes across the Walsh family's small living room. Outside, autumn painted the city in fiery hues, a stark contrast to the sterile white envelope Marcus clutched in his trembling hands. The family's upright piano, worn but well-loved, stood witness to this moment, its brass pedals catching the light like tears. The apartment smelled of coffee and antiseptic, an odd combination that had become normal since Emma's first hospital stay 3 months ago. In the kitchen, his mother's hushed phone conversation with yet another billing department created a tense backdrop to the symphony of emotions playing in Marcus's mind. At 18, Marcus Walsh was tall and lanky, with Pianist's hands that seemed almost too large for his frame. Dark circles underlined his eyes, evidence of nights spent practicing Chopin and Rachmaninoff while his classmates slept. Today, those eyes were fixed on the Vienna Conservatory's insignia embossed on the envelope. "Full scholarship," he whispered, the words hanging in the air like musical notes awaiting resolution. His heart raced with contradicting emotions: elation at achieving his lifelong dream and crushing guilt at the timing. The acceptance letter had arrived the same week as Emma's diagnosis. From her bedroom came a weak cough, followed by the familiar sound of Emma's favorite Mozart piece playing softly from her speaker, the same piece Marcus had taught her to recognize when she was just 5. His mother entered the living room, her phone pressed to her shoulder. "The insurance denied the treatment again," she said, her voice cracking from exhaustion. At 42, Sarah Walsh looked a decade older, her once vibrant face now mapped with worry lines. "They're saying it's experimental." Marcus glanced at the Vienna letter again, the words "prestigious opportunity" and "begins September 1st" jumping out at him. 8 weeks from now, 8 weeks to decide between his future and his family. "How much is it?" he asked quietly. "80,000 for the first round," his mother replied, collapsing onto the couch. "I can pick up extra nursing shifts, maybe sell the car." The piano seemed to call to him, as it always did when decisions loomed. Marcus sat on the bench, fingers hovering over the keys before playing the opening bars of Beethoven's Pathetique, Sonata. The melody filled the apartment with melancholy beauty. Emma appeared in the doorway, thin and pale in her oversized Boston Philharmonic t-shirt, a souvenir from Marcus's performance with them last year. At 15, she had always been his biggest fan. "You got in, didn't you?" she asked, leaning against the wall for support. Despite her weakness, her eyes lit up. "I told you they'd be crazy not to take you." Marcus forced a smile. "Yeah, full ride." Emma's face brightened with genuine joy, untainted by the shadow of her illness. "Mom, did you hear? Marcus got in." She rushed to hug him, nearly stumbling in her excitement. Their mother's smile didn't reach her eyes. That's wonderful, honey. We'll figure something out." In that moment, watching his mother's brave face and feeling his sister's fragile arms around him, Marcus made his decision. The weight of it settled in his chest like a final chord. "Actually," he said carefully, "I'm thinking about deferring for a year. There's an opening at Sullivan's piano bar downtown. The pay is decent, and I could teach private lessons on the side." The silence that followed was deafening. "But Vienna?" Emma whispered, pulling back to look at him. "You've talked about Vienna since you were 10. Marcus shrugged, affecting a casualness he didn't feel. "Vienna's been there for centuries. It can wait one more year." He never mentioned that the scholarship couldn't. Boston, 6 years ago. Sullivan's piano bar on Commonwealth Avenue basked in the warm glow of evening light, its red brick exterior and vintage neon sign a fixture. In the Back Bay neighborhood. Inside, the air hung heavy with cigar smoke, despite the citywide ban, the owner having grandfathered in a private club exemption that no one questioned. Crystal glasses clinked against polished mahogany as Marcus's fingers danced across the keys of a baby grand Steinway, a far cry from Vienna's concert halls, but still a quality instrument. At 19, Marcus had grown into his frame, his shoulders broader from carrying equipment up and down the bar's narrow staircase. His once meticulously trimmed hair now fell past his collar, and a day's stubble shadowed his jaw. The white button-down shirt required by Sullivan was rolled at the sleeves, revealing forearms corded with muscle from hours of practice and work. "Play something happier, Walsh," called Mr. Sullivan from behind the bar, his Boston accent thick, as he polished glasses. "You're making the couples contemplate divorce with that dirge." A few patrons chuckled. Marcus nodded and seamlessly transitioned from Chopin's Prelude in E minor to a jazzy rendition of Autumn Leaves. His classical training blended with improvisation in a way his conservatory professors would have frowned upon. But here, it earned him generous tips and regular customers who came specifically on his nights. As he played, his mind drifted to Emma's hospital room where he'd been just hours before. 1 year had become 2. His deferral letter to Vienna long expired. The experimental treatment had shown promise, but required maintenance doses that kept the family perpetually on the edge of financial disaster. The bell above the door jingled, and Marcus looked up to see Dr. Abernathy, Emma's specialist, sliding onto a bar stool. The doctor's appearance outside the hospital was jarring, like seeing a teacher at the grocery store. During the next break, Marcus approached him, anxiety tightening his chest. "Everything okay with Emma?" he asked, accepting the glass of water. Sullivan slid toward him. Dr. Abernathy nodded, swirling amber liquid in his tumbler. "She's stable, that's not why I'm here." He pulled out his phone, tapping the screen before passing it to Marcus. "My daughter's recital. She's playing Debussy." The video showed a young girl, perhaps 12, carefully working through Clair de Lune. Her technique was developing but lacked emotional depth. "She's been taking lessons for 3 years," Dr. Abernathy continued. "Her teacher is retiring next month. I was wondering if you might consider taking her on." Marcus handed back the phone. "I already teach 15 students." "I'd pay double your rate," the doctor said simply. "And I know others who would do the same." The offer hung between them, tempting in its practicality. More students meant more income, more treatments for Emma, more security. It also meant less time for his own practice, another step away from the concert career he'd once envisioned. "I'll think about it," Marcus finally said. Later that night, in the quiet darkness of the apartment, Marcus sat beside Emma's bed, listening to the soft beep of her monitoring equipment. Their mother had finally gone to sleep after a double shift at the hospital, irony not lost on any of them that she worked in the same building where Emma received treatment. "You should be practicing," Emma murmured, stirring from half-sleep. At 16, her once vibrant personality remained intact, though her body had grown frail. "I played for 6 hours tonight," he replied, smoothing her hair. "That's enough. Not bar music, your music." She looked at him with a clarity that cut through pretense. "You're forgetting, aren't you?" Forgetting what? How to play for yourself. Marcus had no answer for that truth. Boston. 5 years ago, the Walsh apartment had evolved over the years. The upright piano remained in its corner, but now shared space with a small electric keyboard for late-night composing when Emma needed sleep. Medical supplies occupied their own shelf in the hallway closet, neatly organized by Marcus. Each Sunday night, a bulletin board hung in the kitchen, covered with doctor's appointments, work schedules, and payment due dates, a visual calendar of their carefully orchestrated life. Spring rain tapped against the windows as Marcus sorted through a stack of bills at the kitchen table. At 20, he moved with the efficient precision of someone who'd been managing a household far too long. His teaching business had expanded to 23 students, and Sullivan had promoted him to music director with a modest raise. The doorbell rang, interrupting his calculations. On the threshold stood Richard Chen, his former piano teacher from high school, soaking wet despite his umbrella. The older man's appearance sent a jolt through Marcus, a ghost from his previous life. "Professor Chen," Marcus said, surprise evident in his voice. "Please, come in." The elderly Chinese man entered, removing his wet shoes with practiced politeness. His eyes immediately found the piano. "You still play this old thing? The action must be terribly uneven by now." "It works for teaching," Marcus replied defensively. "What brings you here?" Professor Chen placed a large envelope on the table, pushing aside the bills. "Eastman School of Music is hosting a special competition for young American pianists next month. The winner receives a recording contract and national tour." He tapped the envelope. "You should enter." Marcus stared at the envelope as if it might burn him. "I haven't performed classical repertoire publicly in years. I hear you every week at Sullivan's. You're still at performance level, just redirected." The professor's gaze was uncomfortably penetrating. "Your Rachmaninoff etudes were always exceptional." From Emma's room came the sound of laughter. She was video chatting with her online school friends, a social lifeline during her homebound days. "I appreciate the thought," Marcus said, moving the envelope aside, "but my schedule is full with students and the bar." Professor Chen's expression hardened. "That's not why you won't do it." "Excuse me?" "You're afraid." The accusation hung in the air between them. "Not a failure. You've always been too confident for that. You're afraid of success?" Marcus felt heat rising in his face. "That's ridiculous." "Is it? Success would mean choosing your career over your current responsibilities. Better to never try than to face that choice again." The conversation was interrupted by Emma's bedroom door opening. She emerged slowly, using the wall for support, her face lighting up at the sight of their visitor. "Professor Chen, did you bring music?" she asked, her enthusiasm momentarily masking her fatigue. The professor's stern expression softened immediately. "Hello, Emma, you're looking stronger." "New treatment," she replied with practiced optimism. "Are you trying to get my brother to play in public again?" "Unsuccessfully," Chen admitted. Emma's gaze shifted to Marcus, something unreadable in her expression. "He composes now, you know, late at night when he thinks I'm asleep. Beautiful pieces that no one ever hears." Marcus felt exposed, as if a private journal had been read aloud. These compositions were personal therapy, never intended for outside ears. Professor Chen raised an eyebrow. "Original compositions?" "They're nothing," Marcus said quickly. "Just exercises." Emma shook her head stubbornly. "They're not nothing. They're better than half the stuff on those peaceful piano playlists I listen to during treatments." After Professor Chen left, the envelope remained on the table, a bridge to a parallel life. That night, for the first time in years, Marcus dreamt of concert halls and standing ovations, dreams he pushed away come morning, focusing instead on Emma's medication schedule and his first student arriving at 10 a.m. The competition came and went without his entry. Boston, 4 years ago. Summer humidity pressed against the windows of Massachusetts General Hospital's oncology floor. In the waiting area, Marcus sat with his laptop balanced on his knees, his teaching schedule open in one tab, bank account in another. He'd been at the hospital since dawn, when Emma's routine appointment had unexpectedly extended into a full day of tests. At 21, Marcus wore responsibility like a second skin. His fingers tapped restlessly against the keyboard, composing melodies in his mind to combat the anxiety of waiting. On his phone, 3 missed calls from Sullivan's. He'd had to cancel his evening shift with little notice. A notification pinged. An email from Jason, a pianist from his high school days who'd gone on to Juilliard while Marcus had stayed behind. "Thought you might appreciate this," the message read, with a link to a YouTube video. Vienna International. Piano competition finals. "Remember when we talked about entering this together someday?" Marcus hesitated before clicking. The video showed a magnificent concert hall, a young woman at a Bosendorfer Grand, playing the same Liszt sonata he'd once prepared for his Vienna audition. Her technique was flawless, though Marcus noticed subtle interpretive choices he would have made differently. "Mr. Walsh?" Marcus looked up to see Dr. Abernathy approaching, his expression neutral in that practiced way doctors develop. "The good news is we don't see any regression," the doctor said, sitting beside him. "The challenging news is that we're not seeing the improvement we hoped for with this protocol." Marcus closed the laptop, the pianist's triumphant final chords still echoing in his mind. What does that mean for Emma? "We have options, but they're limited without specialized treatment. There's a clinic in Baltimore doing remarkable work with similar cases." "Baltimore?" Marcus repeated, mentally calculating. "Distances, costs, logistics. How long would she need to be there?" "Initially 3 months of intensive therapy. After that, it depends on her response." 3 months meant leaving Boston, putting his teaching practice on hold, potentially losing his position at Sullivan's. Emma would miss her senior year of high school. Their mother couldn't take extended leave from the hospital. "I'll go with her," Marcus heard himself say. "Mom can't afford to lose her health insurance, not now." Dr. Abernathy's expression softened with something like admiration. "The program starts in 3 weeks. I've taken the liberty of putting her on the wait list, just in case." That evening, after breaking the news to his mother, who wept with equal parts gratitude and guilt, Marcus sat in Emma's room while she slept. Her walls were covered with photographs and posters, the Boston Symphony Orchestra, famous pianists she'd admired through him, a few movie stars, and many pictures of their small family in happier times. Her desk caught his attention, unusually neat compared to the typical teenagers. Marcus found himself drawn to a small wooden box tucked on her shelf, painted with musical notes. Inside were dozens of envelopes, all addressed but unstamped. With a mix of curiosity and trepidation, he opened one. "Dear Admissions Committee at the Curtis Institute," it began in Emma's careful handwriting. "I'm writing to inquire if you offer deferred admissions. My brother, Marcus Walsh, is an exceptional pianist who had to postpone his education due to family circumstances." Letter after letter revealed the same theme. Emma reaching out to music schools, competitions, and foundations on his behalf, never sent but carefully preserved. The dates spanned years, the most recent from just last month. A notification lit up his phone. Sullivan's again. With a deep breath, Marcus answered, prepared to explain why he would be leaving his position in 3 weeks. If you're enjoying this story, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next episode. Baltimore, Maryland, 3 years ago. The Johns Hopkins Specialty Clinic stood imposingly against Baltimore's winter sky, its modern glass facade reflecting low-hanging clouds heavy with snow. Inside a small apartment 8 blocks away, Marcus, hunched over a rental keyboard, headphones on as he practiced silently while Emma napped in the bedroom. Their temporary home was sparsely furnished, 2 suitcases still not fully unpacked after 2 months, take-out containers in the recycling bin, and a small Christmas tree with handmade ornaments sent by their mother. At 22, Marcus had developed a routine in this unfamiliar city. Mornings spent at the clinic with Emma, afternoons teaching a handful of students via video calls to maintain some income, evenings composing on the headphone-connected keyboard, careful not to disturb his sister's rest. The apartment's thin walls carried the sounds of the city, distant sirens, voices in the hallway, the rhythmic drumming of a neighbor's music. Marcus had grown to appreciate the white noise, so different from Boston's familiar symphony. He removed his headphones as Emma emerged from the bedroom, wrapped in her favorite oversized cardigan. "That sounded beautiful," she said, surprising him. I could feel the vibrations through the floor. Marcus smiled wryly. Apartment living. Sorry if I woke you. You didn't. She settled onto the couch, her movements more fluid than they'd been in years. The Baltimore treatment protocol was working, slowly, expensively, but undeniably working. What were you playing, one of yours? He nodded, suddenly self-conscious. Just something I've been tinkering with. Does it have a name? Marcus hesitated. I've been calling it interim in my head. Not very creative. Emma laughed, a sound that had become more frequent in recent weeks. Appropriate, though. Everything feels interim lately. She gestured around their temporary living space. I keep thinking about who I would have been without all this. You're 19, Marcus replied gently. You'll still be whoever you want to be. That's not what I meant. Her gaze was direct, unexpectedly mature. I mean who I would have been if I hadn't gotten sick, and who you would have been. She paused. Dr. Levinson asked, about my support system today. I told her about you giving up Vienna. Marcus tensed. They rarely discussed his abandoned scholarship directly. She said something interesting, Emma continued. She said sometimes when we focus on what people sacrifice for us, we miss what they gain. Psychology wasn't covered by insurance last I checked. Marcus deflected with a weak joke. Emma didn't smile. What have you gained, Mark, from all this? The question hung between them, deceptively simple yet profound. Marcus looked at his hands, Pianist's hands that now knew how to administer medications, cook meals for specific dietary restrictions, and fill out insurance forms with equal dexterity. Perspective, he finally answered, and a certain kind of freedom. Freedom, Emma's expression was skeptical, from expectations, from the competition circuit, from constantly measuring myself against others. He gestured to the keyboard. I write whatever I want now. No professors grading my technique or criticizing my interpretations. Outside, snow began to fall, capturing the streetlight in crystalline patterns against the window. Play something. For me, Emma requested. Something no professor would approve of. Marcus returned to the keyboard, disconnecting the headphones. His fingers found the keys, and he began playing a piece that blended classical structure with jazz harmonies and folk-inspired melodies, a composition that defied categorization. As he played, Emma closed her eyes, smiling. Later that night, after Emma had gone to bed, Marcus received an email notification that made his heart skip. Sullivan's Piano Bar was closing permanently, another victim of Boston's rising commercial rents. His safety net, the job he'd planned to return to, was gone. Marcus stared at the screen, a strange sense of liberation mixing with panic. One more tie to his old life, severed. Boston 2 years ago. Spring arrived in Boston with characteristic unpredictability, 60 degrees and sunny one day, sleeting the next. The Walsh apartment welcomed Emma and Marcus home with a fresh coat of paint and new medical equipment, courtesy of a hospital charity program. Their mother had taken a rare day off to prepare for their homecoming, the apartment smelling of cleaning products and Emma's favorite lemon chicken. At 23, Marcus carried himself differently after the year in Baltimore. A quiet confidence had replaced his former resignation, evident in the set of his shoulders and directness of his gaze. Emma, too, had transformed, still thin but with healthy color in her cheeks, her movement steady as she explored the changes to her childhood bedroom. Your students have been asking about you non-stop, their mother said, setting the table for dinner. Mrs. Abernathy says her daughter improved more with you in 2 years than with her previous teacher in 5. Marcus nodded, unpacking the last of their bags. I've already scheduled restart lessons for next week, and I have an interview at Brighton Music Academy on Thursday. After dinner, while their mother returned to work for a night shift, and Emma rested, Marcus found himself drawn to the piano. Its slightly out-of-tune keys welcomed him back like an old friend as he played through one of his Baltimore compositions, now refined and expanded. The doorbell interrupted his playing. He opened the door to find Sophia Mercer, his replacement at Sullivan's before it closed, standing nervously in the hallway. They'd kept in loose contact through social media, but her appearance at his door was unexpected. "Sophia, what's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong," she said, stepping inside when he gestured. "I heard you were back. I'm playing at Cambridge Jazz Club now and, well," she extended a flyer toward him. "We need a pianist for Thursday nights. Nothing fancy, just standards and accompaniment." Marcus took the flyer, studying it. "I appreciate the thought, but with Emma just home, it's 4 hours a week, Marcus. I know you need the money, and frankly, we need someone who can actually read arrangements." Her directness had always been her most defining quality. From Emma's bedroom came her voice. "Take the gig, Mark." Sophia laughed as Marcus rolled his eyes. "Still eavesdropping, Emma?" "Still making decisions for other people, Marcus," Emma retorted, appearing in the doorway. She looked better than she had in years, her hair grown back from treatments, styled fashionably. "Hi, Sophia. Ignore my overprotective brother, he'll take the job." After Sophia left, Emma settled at the kitchen table, opening her laptop. "We need to talk about college applications. I've been researching programs with strong support services for students with medical needs." Marcus blinked, caught off guard. "College, are you sure you're ready?" "The doctors cleared me for regular activities with monitoring," she replied calmly. "And I've been taking online courses. For 2 years, I can handle it." "What about costs? The medical bills are what they are," she interrupted firmly. "But I'm not putting my life on hold anymore, and neither should you." She turned her laptop toward him, revealing not college applications, but an open email. "This came today. I wasn't going to show you yet, but..." She trailed off, watching his expression as he read. The email was from the New England Conservatory of Music, addressed to Emma. "Thank you for your inquiry regarding Marcus Walsh. While we typically don't consider applicants without a formal audition, the recording you provided of your brother's original compositions has been reviewed by our composition faculty with great interest. We would like to invite him to apply for a special scholarship in our contemporary composition program." Marcus looked up, stunned. "What recording? Emma, what did you do?" Emma's expression mixed guilt with defiance. "Remember those nights in Baltimore when you thought I was sleeping? I recorded you on my phone." She hesitated. "Are you mad?" Words failed him as contradictory emotions collided. Violation, gratitude, fear, possibility. "Before you answer," Emma said quickly, "there's something else you need to see." Boston. Still 2 years ago. Emma's bedroom had always been her sanctuary, a space that evolved with her through childhood, illness, and recovery. Now, at 20, she had redecorated it with a college student sensibility. Fairy lights strung above her bed, art prints replacing pop star posters, textbooks stacked on her desk. But one element remained unchanged, the musical notebox Marcus had discovered years ago. "Sit," Emma instructed, gesturing to her bed while she retrieved the box from her closet. Marcus complied, watching as his sister placed the familiar container between them. The evening light filtered through her curtains, casting long shadows across the room, piano notes from the neighbors drifting through the thin walls. "I owe you an explanation," Emma said, opening the box to reveal not just the letters he'd glimpsed years ago, but a much larger collection that had clearly outgrown its original home. Beneath the letters lay newspaper clippings, concert programs, and what appeared to be transcribed music sheets. "What is all this?" Marcus asked, lifting. A yellowed review from a Boston music journal, dated 7 years earlier. It featured a photo of him at 18, seated at a grand piano during his final recital before Vienna was meant to happen. Emma took a deep breath. "I started collecting everything about your music when I was 13, before I got sick. Just because I was proud of you." She shuffled through the papers, extracting a meticulously organized folder. "Then after you gave up Vienna, it became something else. A record, I guess, of what might have been." Marcus felt his throat tighten as he examined the contents. Every review, every program from student recitals, every mention of his name in local music publications, preserved as if they were precious artifacts. "And these?" he asked, indicating the music sheets written in Emma's careful handwriting. "I tried to transcribe your compositions," she admitted, a flush coloring her cheeks. "I'm not very good, but I wanted to preserve them somehow. You never wrote them down." Marcus stared at the pages, imperfect but recognizable versions of melodies he'd played during late nights, thinking no one was listening, his private emotional journal, captured by his sister's determined ear. Why? He finally managed, overcome by the scale of her secret archiving. Emma met his gaze directly. At first, it was guilt. I thought if I kept everything, someday you could pick up where you left off. She paused, brushing her fingers over a particularly worn clipping. But then I realized it was more than that. Your music became intertwined with my recovery. On my worst days, I'd look at these and promise myself I'd get better, so you could go back to it. Emma, Marcus began, but she cut him off. Let me finish. When we were in Baltimore, I started sending inquiries again, but this time I included recordings. She pulled out her phone, opening a folder of audio files, each labeled with dates and titles Marcus had never assigned. I've sent them to 23 schools and competitions in the past year. The revelation left Marcus speechless. All this time, while he'd been letting go of his former ambitions, Emma had been preserving them, nurturing them in secret. I never sent anything without screenshotting their submission pages, she added quickly. If you're angry, you can withdraw them all. Marcus looked at the box between. Left when Marcus was 10, taking his record collection but leaving the upright piano neither child had yet learned to play. A stagehand appeared. 5 minutes, Mr. Walsh. As his family left to take their seats, Emma lingered, pressing something into his hand. For luck, she whispered. Marcus looked down to find a newspaper clipping, the very first review he'd ever received, age 12, from a community newspaper that had long since ceased publication. The headline read, "Young Pianist shows remarkable promise." From the stage came applause as the fourth composer's piece concluded. Marcus took a deep breath and moved to the wings, watching as the musicians rearranged themselves for his composition. The conservatory's top students, now his peers, prepared to bring his most personal work to life. The concert hall hushed as the dean stepped forward to introduce him. Our final composer this evening represents the extraordinary breadth of musical journeys. After years away from formal musical education, his compositions captured our faculty's attention through their emotional depth and technical sophistication. As Marcus stepped onto the famous stage, the spotlight momentarily blinding, he found Emma's face in the front row. Beside her sat doctors who had treated her, former students now grown, colleagues from the jazz club, and, most surprisingly, Mr. Sullivan himself, the bar owner who'd given him his first paying musical job. Marcus took his place at the piano, nodding to the other musicians. As he poised his hands above the keys, the years of sacrifice, detour, and rediscovery collapsed into a single moment of perfect clarity. The music began. Boston. Present day. Morning sunlight streamed through the windows of Marcus's new apartment, near the conservatory, illuminating shelves lined with scores and books, walls adorned with framed programs and reviews. A sleek digital piano occupied one corner, while a small desk held his laptop and composition notebooks. At 26, Marcus Walsh had created a space that honored both the musician he'd become and the journey that had shaped him. The buzzer sounded, Emma arriving for their standing Sunday brunch tradition. Since moving into her own dormitory apartment, these weekly meetings had become sacred time for the siblings who'd weathered so much together. "It came," she announced without preamble, waving an envelope as she entered. "Your Vienna letter." Marcus smiled at her enthusiasm, taking the envelope from the prestigious international composition competition he'd entered months earlier. "It's probably a rejection. They only accept 5 composers worldwide." "Open it," Emma insisted, practically vibrating with anticipation as she set down a bag of pastries from their favorite bakery. With deliberate slowness, partly to tease his impatient sister, Marcus opened the envelope and unfolded the letter within. His eyes scanned the formal language, searching for the key phrase. "Well?" Emma demanded. "I'm in," he said, voice quiet. With disbelief. "They accepted my submission. 2 weeks in Vienna working with the Philharmonic on a commissioned piece." Emma's squeal of delight echoed through the apartment as she threw her arms around him. Vienna! You're going to Vienna, after all. The symbolism wasn't lost on either of them. The city that had represented his greatest sacrifice, now offering a different kind of welcome, one that honored the composer he'd become rather than the pianist he might have been. When's the program? Emma asked, already reaching for his laptop to check flights. November, 6 months from now. Perfect timing. I'll be finished with my fall semester exams. She looked up, expression daring him to object. Don't even try to tell me I'm not coming. Marcus laughed, the joy of the moment overwhelming any practical concerns. We'll figure it out. Later, after Emma had left for a study group, Marcus sat at his piano, the Vienna letter propped against a framed photo of their family, taken at his graduation ceremony just months earlier. His fingers found the keys, playing a melody that had been forming in his mind since reading the acceptance letter. His phone buzzed with a message from Emma. Check your email. Sent you something important. The email contained no text, just an attachment labeled Complete Archive.pdf. Marcus opened it to find hundreds of scanned pages, every clipping, program, letter, and transcription from Emma's collection, digitized and organized chronologically. The final page was new, a review of the Emerging Composers Showcase with his name highlighted and a single sentence underlined. Walsh's composition revealed a rare artistic voice shaped by life experience as much as by technical training. Below the scan, Emma had added a single line. The story isn't over. It's just getting good. Marcus smiled, returning to the piano. The melody continued to develop under his fingers, not with something a little different tonight, he said, voice steady despite his racing heart. A piece I composed during a year in Baltimore with my sister. It's called Interim No More. His fingers found the keys, and the piece that had been born in hospital waiting rooms and late-night worry began to fill the club. Unlike his jazz arrangements, this composition blended classical structures with contemporary emotions, technically complex, yet emotionally direct. He'd never performed it publicly, never even properly written it down. The bassist and drummer, professional improvisers both, found their way into the piece gradually, adding subtle textures that enhanced rather than interrupted the narrative of the melody. Marcus lost himself in the performance, the audience fading as the music took precedence. The piece built to its climax, a passage that always reminded him of Emma's recovery, notes ascending like hope after long darkness, before resolving into a gentle, questioning conclusion. When the final note faded, the silence lasted just long enough for Marcus to fear he'd misjudged the moment. Then applause erupted, startling in its enthusiasm. Marcus looked up to see the professor from the conservatory on his feet, joined quickly by others throughout the club. After the set, as patrons filtered out into the rainy night, the professor approached. His handshake was firm, his eyes bright with interest. That final piece, he said without preamble. Your sister wasn't exaggerating your talent. Marcus glanced at Emma, who stood nearby pretending not to eavesdrop. Thank you, sir. We have a small concert series for emerging composers. Nothing grand, but a chance to present original work to an appreciative audience. Would you consider participating? The invitation hung in the air between them. Not Vienna, not a full scholarship, but a door opening nonetheless. Later that night, Marcus sat at his laptop, the application still open to the blank personal statement. Emma had gone to bed, and their mother was still at work. The apartment was quiet except for the gentle tapping of rain against the windows. His fingers hovered over the keyboard before finding their rhythm. Music has never been a choice for me. It has been a constant companion through circumstances that required impossible choices. This application is not the beginning of my compositional journey, nor is it a return to an abandoned path. Rather, it represents a harmony I've finally found between who I was meant to be and who I've become. Boston, 6 months ago. New. England Conservatory's Jordan Hall stood as an architectural testament to musical devotion, its elegant facade welcoming visitors into one of Boston's most acoustically perfect performance spaces. Inside, famed musicians had graced its stage for over a century, and tonight Marcus Walsh would join their ranks. The Emerging Composers Showcase program, printed on heavy cream paper with the conservatory's insignia, listed Marcus's name alongside 4 other selected composers. Each would present an original composition performed by conservatory musicians, with Marcus closing the program. Backstage, Marcus adjusted his tuxedo, borrowed from a fellow student and slightly too tight across the shoulders. At 25, he'd grown comfortable in the dual worlds of performer and composer, but tonight represented a merging of those identities on a prestigious stage he'd once thought forever beyond his reach. Emma appeared in the green room doorway, breathtaking in a deep blue dress, her health now stable enough that most people would never guess the medical battles she'd fought. Behind her stood their mother, elegant in a rare night free from scrubs, and Professor Chen, who had returned to Marcus's life as an unofficial mentor when he enrolled in the master's program. "The hall is nearly full," Emma reported, excitement coloring her voice. "They added extra chairs in the back." Marcus nodded, unable to form words as the reality of the moment pressed against his chest. On the music stand before him sat his composition, Archivist's Sonata, fully orchestrated for piano, string quartet, and clarinet. The piece had poured out of him after discovering Emma's collection, each movement representing a different period of their journey. Professor Chen stepped forward, examining the score with a critical eye. "Your dynamics in the third movement still concern me. The transition is abrupt." "It's meant to be," Marcus replied, a confidence in his voice that would have been unimaginable a year ago. "The shift represents the moment of decision, leaving Vienna behind." The professor's expression softened. "You've earned this night, Marcus, not despite your detour but because of it." Their mother approached, straightening his bow tie with hands accustomed to more practical tasks. "Your father would have been so proud," she said quietly, referring to the man who'd a lament for what might have been, but a celebration of what was and what could still be. This piece would be different from his earlier compositions, carrying notes of anticipation rather than resignation. Outside his window, Boston continued, its Sunday rhythm, unaware of the quiet transformation taking place in the apartment of a once prodigy who had found his way back to music through an unexpected path. Inside, Marcus played on, each note a testament to the truth he'd finally embraced. Sometimes the most beautiful compositions arise when life rewrites the score. In Vienna, a different kind of debut awaited, but more importantly, here in Boston, the music had never truly stopped. 7 years of his musical life, documented with more care than he himself had shown it. He thought of the New England Conservatory email, of the Cambridge Jazz Club flyer, of the unexpected crossroads he now faced. "I'm not angry," he finally said, his voice thick with emotion. "I just don't know if I can be that person anymore." Emma smiled, a knowing expression beyond her years. "You never stopped being that person. You just stopped letting anyone else see it." She closed the box gently, "Including yourself." Boston. 1 year ago. The Cambridge Jazz Club hummed with anticipation, its intimate space packed with Friday night patrons seeking refuge from early autumn rain. Crystal glasses and silverware clinked against the backdrop of conversations, creating a symphony of ordinary life. In the small green room behind the stage, Marcus adjusted his tie, a concession to the club's upscale atmosphere that still felt foreign after years of Sullivan's casual dress code. At 24, Marcus had developed a new routine: teaching at Brighton Music Academy 3 days a week, performing at the Jazz Club Thursday and Friday nights, and attending composition seminars at New England Conservatory on Saturdays. The patchwork schedule provided stability while allowing him to cautiously step back into the musical world he'd abandoned. Emma knocked on the open door, entering with the confident stride of someone who'd become a regular presence at his performances. Now a sophomore at Boston University studying health advocacy, she balanced her own classes and medical maintenance with a determination that sometimes left Marcus breathless. "Full house tonight," she reported, settling into the room's only other chair. "Mom's sorry she couldn't make it, double shift again." Marcus nodded, checking his watch. "How was your appointment today?" "Same as last time, stable." She smiled, an expression once rare but now wonderfully common. "Stop changing the subject. Did you decide about the application?" The application lay on the dressing table between them, New England Conservatory's Masters in Composition program, deadline midnight. Marcus had completed everything except the personal statement, the cursor blinking accusingly on his laptop for weeks. "I still don't know what to write," he admitted, adjusting his already perfect tie again. Emma leaned forward. "Writer's block from a composer. Ironic. Composition is different. This requires explaining why I deserve this opportunity after walking away from music for years." "You never walked away from music," Emma corrected firmly. "You walked away from a career path. The music was always there." She gestured toward the stage beyond the walls. "It's clearly still there. Just be honest about your journey." A staff member appeared in the doorway. "5 minutes, Mr. Walsh." When the door closed again, Emma stood, straightening Marcus's tie unnecessarily. "Play my favorite tonight?" "The Baltimore piece. It's not on the set list." "So? You're the pianist. They'll love it." She hesitated, then added, "I invited someone, a professor from the conservatory. He's curious about the composer of the pieces I've been sending them." Marcus froze. "You did what?" "He's already out there. Balding guy, blue blazer, second table from the stage." She stepped back, assessing her handiwork with his tie. "The world deserves to hear your music, Marcus, not just arrangements of standards." Before he could protest further, she slipped out, leaving him alone with the application, and 5 minutes to prepare for an impromptu audition he hadn't agreed to. On stage, the lights were lower than usual, creating pools of amber warmth that isolated each table in its own intimate sphere. Marcus took his place at the piano, nodding to the bassist and drummer he'd been working with for months now. His eyes found the second table from the stage, and indeed a balding man in a blue blazer sat there, program in hand, expression attentive. The set began with familiar jazz standards, Marcus's classical training evident in his technical precision, while his years at Sullivan's had gifted him with improvisational freedom. He moved through Autumn Leaves and Take 5 with comfortable expertise, but his mind remained fixed on the composition waiting in the wings of his consciousness, the piece Emma had requested. During a brief intermission, the bassist leaned over. "Your sister says you've got an original for the second set." Marcus hesitated only briefly before nodding. "Just follow my lead on the last number." When they returned to the stage, Marcus felt a familiar tension in his shoulders, not the comfortable muscle memory of performance, but the vulnerability of sharing something personal. He played through the planned set, each piece bringing him closer to the moment of decision. Finally, only one song remained. Marcus leaned toward the microphone. "I'd like to close.